In June 2016, a woman in a floor-length burgundy ball gown walked onto the stage at Wembley Arena in London. The arena was full. The crowd roared. Alicia Keys's "Girl on Fire" shook the rafters. The woman raised her arms, smiled, and told the audience that in 2 years, nobody would be talking about Bitcoin anymore. She had something better. Her name was Ruja Ignatova. The crowd called her the Cryptoqueen. 16 months later, she boarded a budget Ryanair flight from Sofia, Bulgaria to Athens, Greece. She was scheduled to give a keynote speech to investors in Lisbon the same evening. She did not get on the connecting flight. She did not give the speech. She has not been seen in public since. By the time she disappeared on October 25th, 2017, she had taken approximately $4 billion from 3.5 million investors across 175 countries. The product she sold them did not exist. OneCoin was not a cryptocurrency. It was not built on a blockchain. It had no mining process, no distributed ledger, no verifiable transaction history. It was a number in a database, controlled entirely by Ignatova and her team, with a value that she set manually, and a supply that she could inflate or deflate at will. It was, from the first day it was pitched to investors, a lie. The question this story has been asking for 8 years, and has not yet answered, is, where is she? To understand the scale of what Ignatova built, you have to understand the environment she built it in. In 2014, Bitcoin had survived its first major boom and bust cycle and was slowly rebuilding credibility. A wave of new cryptocurrencies was emerging. The concept was still new enough to be genuinely confusing to most people, and that confusion was exactly the opening Ignatova needed. She was not a simple fraudster. She had a doctorate in private international law from the University of Konstanz. She had worked as a consultant at McKinsey & Company. She spoke multiple languages, moved comfortably in boardrooms and at financial conferences, and had cultivated an image of intellectual authority that her investors found deeply reassuring. She co-founded OneCoin in Sofia, Bulgaria in 2014 with a British-Swedish promoter named Sebastian Greenwood. Their private emails, later obtained by prosecutors, would prove they understood from the start what they were doing. In one exchange, Greenwood described their investors as idiots. In another, the two referred to OneCoin itself as a trashy coin. They were not building something they believed in. They were running a script. The pitch was sophisticated. OneCoin was marketed as a simpler, safer, more accessible alternative to Bitcoin, one that didn't require technical knowledge or complicated wallets. Investors didn't buy OneCoin directly. They bought educational packages, bundles of learning materials about cryptocurrency trading, priced between €100 and €118,000. Included with each package were tokens that could supposedly be used to mine OneCoin. There was no mining, no blockchain, no independent price discovery. The coin's value was whatever the software said it was, and the software said whatever Ignatova told it to say. The price climbed from 54 cents at launch to a stated high of $32.56, a rise of 6,000%, without a single moment of genuine market activity underlying it. The structure was also a pyramid. Promoters earned commissions for recruiting new investors. Those new investors earned commissions for recruiting more. The majority of money coming into OneCoin at any given time was not returns on a genuine investment. It was the investment of the next person in the chain, redistributed upward. They held events, enormous theatrical events. Wembley Arena, the National Indoor Arena in Birmingham, convention centers across Europe, Asia, and Africa. In Uganda, investors who lost their homes to OneCoin are still waiting for some form of restitution. In rural Pakistan, in small towns across China, in communities across Eastern Europe, where people trusted the word of local promoters who had themselves been deceived, OneCoin took savings that people could not afford to lose. Chinese law enforcement eventually arrested and prosecuted 98 people connected to OneCoin in China, recovering 1.7 billion yuan, approximately $267 million. In the process, that was only a fraction of what had flowed in. By 2017, pressure was building. International regulators were beginning to investigate. Banks in multiple countries were flagging OneCoin transactions as suspicious. In the United States, a federal grand jury in the Southern District of New York had begun building a case. In October 2017, a warrant was issued for Ignatova's arrest on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering conspiracy. Investigators believe she learned the warrant was coming. There is evidence she had installed surveillance equipment in the apartment of her boyfriend, a man who was, unknown to her, cooperating with the FBI investigation. She saw what was coming. She moved. On October 25, 2017, she boarded her Ryanair flight from Sofia to Athens. Then she vanished. What happened next is where the story becomes genuinely murky. Her brother, Konstantin Ignatov, took over as public face of OneCoin. He continued to promote it publicly, attending events, speaking to investors, pretending that everything was normal, until March 2019, when federal agents arrested him at Los Angeles International Airport. He pleaded guilty to fraud and money laundering, cooperated extensively with prosecutors, and was sentenced to 34 months in prison, which he has since served. Sebastian Greenwood, the co-founder, was arrested in Thailand in July 2018. He eventually pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. In 2023, he was sentenced to 20 years in a U.S. federal prison. A New York lawyer named Mark Scott was convicted in 2019 of laundering $400 million in OneCoin proceeds through a series of offshore funds. Multiple other promoters and associates across multiple jurisdictions have been arrested, charged, or convicted. Ruja Ignatova has not been found. In June 2022, the FBI added her to its 10 most wanted fugitives list, only the 11th woman in the list's 72-year history to appear there, and currently the only woman on it. Initially offering a $100,000 reward, the Bureau raised it in June 2024 to $5 million, a 50-fold increase, suggesting active and ongoing investigative confidence that she can still be found, and yet she hasn't been. What the investigators believe: she is likely traveling with armed bodyguards. She may have undergone cosmetic surgery to alter her appearance. She may hold multiple passports, Russian, Ukrainian, and German, and move between jurisdictions specifically chosen to complicate extradition. Sightings have been reported in Dubai, Russia, Cape Town, and Germany. None have been confirmed. What a Bulgarian investigative reporting outlet believes: she may be dead. According to documents cited by the Bureau of Investigative Reporting and Data in 2023, a police informant reported overhearing the brother-in-law of Bulgarian drug, Lord Christoforos Amanatidis, known as Taki, claim that Ignatova was murdered in November 2018 aboard a yacht in the Ionian Sea. The alleged motive was to silence her knowledge of Taki's role in laundering OneCoin proceeds. Her body, the informant claimed, was dismembered and disposed of at sea. The alleged killer is currently serving a prison sentence in the Netherlands for drug trafficking. The FBI has officially stated that it continues to operate on the assumption that she is alive, and that it has no documented evidence to the contrary. The $5 million reward has not been suspended. What is certain, in August 2024, a UK High Court issued a worldwide asset freeze order targeting Ignatova and 7 associates, as well as 2 Guernsey-based shell companies she used to purchase properties in London. The order was sought by a group of more than 400 OneCoin victims represented by the law firm Mishcon de Reya. The court's willingness to issue a global freeze on assets belonging to a person of unknown whereabouts is itself legally significant. It signals that the legal system has not written off the pursuit. Also certain, the 3.5 million people who invested in OneCoin have recovered almost nothing. The educational packages they purchased contained plagiarized content copied from free sources, including Wikipedia. The tokens they received were entries in a database that no longer functions. The promise of a currency that would surpass Bitcoin has resolved into a criminal case file and a missing persons bulletin. OneCoin's collapse did not discredit cryptocurrency as a concept, but it contributed significantly to a regulatory reckoning that continues today. The case became a reference point for every subsequent discussion about what distinguishes a legitimate blockchain project from a fraudulent one. It was, in the most literal sense possible, a coin with no blockchain. It was a number dressed up as a revolution, and the woman who built it, the Oxford-educated McKinsey consultant who walked onto the Wembley Arena stage to a standing ovation and told the crowd that Bitcoin was over, is either somewhere out there, waiting for the moment she thinks it's safe to resurface, or she is not anywhere at all. The FBI has a $5 million answer ready for anyone who knows which one is true. If you want to track the cases that the mainstream financial world refuses to take seriously until it's too late, subscribe, because the next one is already in production.